One of the most terrifying moments of my life. Oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I had family members who were like borderline kind of angry with me. The discipline and redirection of God is out of love. Living your life to please other people is really exhausting. It's not how we were meant to live. Where to even begin? Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. My name is Abby and I'm about to be a first year middle school math teacher. So today we're doing a little bit of like a throwback video. I feel like I haven't really talked about my career change on this channel in a long time, and we're coming up on a year, believe it or not, since I quit my corporate engineering job and decided to go into education, which is just crazy to me that, like, it doesn't feel like it's been a year. That seems crazy that it's already been that long, but it also feels like it's kind of been 10 years. Like, I feel like I'm just a completely different human being than where I was last summer, which I think is a good thing, and I'll go more into that. But if you're new and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I would highly recommend going back. I have an entire playlist on my channel dedicated to my career change. I will link a video up here that's like I think it's my very first video I've ever made on my channel that was just like dropping the bomb on everybody that, hey, I'm like quitting engineering and doing something completely different. So definitely go watch that, because I'm really not gonna go into a lot of detail in this video on kind of that process and that story, because I've just already talked about it so much. I feel like there's no point in wasting time. So I just wanted to make a video just kind of reflecting on this past year, reflecting on what that transition was like. I also asked some of you guys on Instagram to submit any questions that you had just about this transition, about my process, anything like that. And a few of y'all asked some really good questions, and so I'm also going to be answering those. So, man, where to even begin? I don't have like a outline for this video at all. I figured it would just be nice for me to like sit down and kind of organically process things. So if I seem a little all over the place, it's kind of because I am. But yeah, a year ago this week, I was sending in my resignation letter to my boss. I will say sending that letter was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. And I remember sending it and then immediately closing my laptop and just like pacing around the house. I will say that all of my coworkers, including my boss, they were extremely surprised, but they were all extremely supportive of me in that decision. And I really left on good terms. I was super thankful for that part of my transition. They even made me like a little teacher supply goodie box that whenever I went up to the office to drop off my work laptop on my very last day, they had it there waiting for me as a surprise. And so all that to say, they were amazing about it. And this past year has just been a whirlwind. I obviously was working as a para at a high school and doing my certifications and everything, and it's just crazy to me how much can change in a year. Like, honestly, last summer feels like 10 summers ago, and I'm sure part of that is because of COVID, but also just, like I said, I feel like a completely different person. Last summer, I was not in a good place. I was frantic. I was wanting to make a transition, but I was terrified. My anxiety was like at its all-time worst. And I remember at the beginning of last summer, I had already enrolled in a certification program, but in my head I was like, well, I'll just like do this on the side and I'll stay at my job for a couple years or so, and then if, you know, I actually decide that this teaching thing is for me, then, you know, I'll quit later. And so I was kind of still trying to push it off as much as I could, even though I was honestly miserable. I was having panic attacks almost on a daily basis. I couldn't even enjoy my weekends because I was so anxious and just dreading having to go to work on Monday. Like, Friday afternoon, I felt free, but then like starting Saturday morning, I was already thinking about how I was gonna have to go back to work, and it was like debilitating. And I remember as I was going through that summer, I was telling, other people and trying to tell myself, no, I'm going to stay at my job. I'm going to stay at my job. I can do it. I can power through. But internally, I was like kind of freaking out about it. I was like, I don't know how I can do this. Like, I don't know how I can live like this for another 2 years. I just was so afraid, though, to verbalize that I really wanted to quit my job as soon as possible. And I remember I was in a session with my therapist. I remember the day that she just looked at me and was like, Abby, why don't you just quit your job? I remember when she said that, it was like someone had finally validated those feelings, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. And I even asked her, I was like, so you don't think that that's crazy? Like, that's not a crazy thing to think about, is how maybe I could speed this process along for the sake of my mental health and physical health. At that point, it was like taking like a toll on me physically as well. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating as much as I should. And so I remember whenever she said that, that day was like a freeing day for me. And I was like, okay, I can actually process what this might look like. And that's when Aaron and I started having those conversations. And he was amazing throughout the whole process and everything. But it's crazy just to think back, because I think one of the biggest things I've learned about myself in this past year is that a lot of my decision making, I think, in the past has been based on what I think other people want to see from me and what I think will make other people the most happy. And I always told myself I wasn't a people pleaser, but I'm like, I 100% am. And so something I have learned just in the past year is just really how to be confident in my own decision making and how to be okay with the fact that not everybody's gonna be on your side. Not everybody's gonna think that the thing that you decided to do is gonna be, the best thing. And people have opinions, and that's okay, they're entitled to them, but you can't base your entire life on validation from other people. Living your life to please other people is really exhausting. It's not how we were meant to live. Just learning how to trust my own decisions, not because I have all of the answers, but because I'm the only one that knows my life and my feelings the best. The only person that knows them more than I do is Jesus, and I have a relationship with him. And so the fact that I'm dialoguing with him and submitting all of my decisions to him, that is enough. That is enough. That's kind of what I feel like, overall I've learned the most about, and it's just been a really great transition for me. I feel like it's the biggest decision and the scariest decision I've probably ever had to make in my life, but I'm really proud of myself, and I feel like God really used it to grow me and shape me in ways that I wouldn't have been if I hadn't have gone through that process. So I am now going to turn to some questions that y'all have submitted and answer those. So I have my computer over here, so if I'm leaning and looking, that's why. So the first question that I'm going to answer is, what was the final straw that led you to make the switch? I think the final straw for me wasn't really a certain event that happened or a certain thing at my job that happened. Like I've said, my company that I worked for was amazing. It was honestly the dream job type thing that, students who graduate from college hope to end up at firms like I was at. They really were amazing. And funnily enough, that plays into what was the final straw. So before I worked at that firm, I had worked at 2 other firms interning during the summer. And both of those times that I interned those summers, I had some of the same symptoms of anxiety, just being really unhappy, really dreading going to work during those 2 summers. And of course, there were days where it wasn't that bad, and I had friends there. I made friends at where I was working, and so some days it felt okay and fine, but most days I would end up crying during my lunch break, or just feeling like, oh, I just do not want to come back. I'm tired of working here. I don't like this at all. And at the first place, I think I blamed those feelings mostly on I wasn't doing work in stormwater like I was doing later on. I think I was just like, oh, I think maybe I just don't like this field. Like maybe I just don't like this specific program that I'm on all day, or these kinds of plans that I'm looking at and this type of work. And that's really what I tried to blame it on. So then the next summer I worked at another firm and I was doing stormwater. And I did like stormwater better, but I still started having those feelings of just like, oh, I just really don't like this. This just does not feel like a good fit for me. I would just cry and like feel like I was hyperventilating on my drive to work a lot of mornings, and I couldn't tell you why, like because I would get to work and everything would be fine. Like it wasn't like there was this thing that I was dreading. I couldn't pinpoint anything. It was just like this overarching feeling of dread. I know at that firm that summer, they were having a lot of turnover. It was just a really big season of transition for that firm. And so that summer I blamed it on, okay, I like this stormwater work better, but now like maybe it's the lack of stability. Everything feels a little bit chaotic. There's a lot of turnover. So maybe if I find a place that is more stable and I can do stormwater, then that will be like the perfect fit for me. And that's literally what I landed out of college. I interviewed at this firm and they were so great, so nice, so stable, such a great reputation. I was doing stormwater. I had a very supportive team. It was like what would have been like the Goldilocks position. And I was like, great, finally, I'm sure that this will fix all my problems. And it didn't. And that was kind of the last straw, was whenever I had felt like I had tweaked all of the factors within engineering to suit what I felt like I needed and what I theoretically would like best. So that was really the final straw for me, was just realizing I'm literally in probably the best situation that I could be, and I'm still extremely unhappy with what I have to wake up and do every morning. I just had a really hard time feeling purposeful and really hard time sitting at a desk staring at a computer for 9 hours a day. I know that sounds silly because so many people do it, but it like was sucking the life out of me. And so I think that was kind of the last straw. And that's when I realized I think it's the nature of the work in the industry that just really isn't a good fit for me as a whole, which necessitated a bigger transition, which is what I ended up doing. The next question was, what has been the hardest and easiest thing about making the change? I think the hardest thing about making the change was it was so scary. I hate disappointing people so much, and so I was really, really scared to tell my boss that I was quitting. I was really scared to have that conversation with my family. Also, I honestly experienced some guilt because just like financially, because I ended up transitioning from an engineering job into a paraprofessional role at a high school. Paraprofessionals make very little money. I was literally making a third of what I had previously made at my engineering job whenever I took that job. And so there was even some guilt in me of feeling like I was financially letting our family down, our family being like me and Aaron. That really wasn't the case. We were like very blessed to be in a position where Aaron has a really great job, and we were able to basically live off of his paycheck and his salary. And so, but I did experience some guilt too with that. So I think the hardest thing was just how scary it was and just the fear of disappointing so many people. But I think the easiest thing about it was just how quickly I realized that I was where I was supposed to be once I started working at the high school. It was easy to go to work every day. Obviously, there were some days where I was burnt out. All of us were burnt out. We were tired of hybrid learning. Obviously, it wasn't rainbows and unicorns. Anybody in education can tell you that of the last year. But I think really the easiest thing was falling into that position and just feeling like I could spread my wings and fly, and that I was doing something that I felt so purposeful about, and my team was amazing at that high school. And so they just really made this past year easy, I guess, as easy as it could be, just really enjoyable. And so, yeah. How did you deal with people who didn't get it? So I would say that I don't know if I quote unquote like dealt with them. Basically, I did have people who were either in my family or just other people that I told, even just like random people on YouTube who have found my videos and told me that I was stupid for wanting to be an educator. I think I just played things pretty close to the chest. I talked to Aaron, obviously. I talked to my immediate family members about it, but I really didn't start telling more extended family or just other people until that transition had already been made. So at that point, those were the people, like extended family / just other random people, who I experienced the most pushback from. And I would say for them, I would just share my heart with them about why I was doing it, and I would tell them how excited I was. And if they still weren't excited for me, I was just like, okay, that's fine. Because at that point, I had made the transition and I had already felt so much better just about where I was that it really didn't matter to me that they were not understanding. And I will say, if it's people who are strangers who don't even know you, literally their opinion doesn't even matter. But even if you're getting pushback for a transition from like your family, I would say that even if they don't immediately get it, if the transition really is right for you, they will see that how much happier you are, how much more purposeful you feel. They will see like the benefits of that transition in your life, and then they will ultimately come around and support you. So I had family members who were like borderline kind of angry with me about that transition, who are now the ones who ask me most often about teaching and are really excited. And it's just because they saw that it really was the best fit for me. Okay, the next question was, what is the biggest thing that you've learned about God and about yourself? I like this question. So I've already kind of touched on what I've learned about myself, and that is just that I can be confident in my decision making and don't have to rely on the validation of other people for every little thing that I decide to do. And I don't have to justify myself to everybody. And so I would say that that's the kind of the biggest thing that I've learned about myself, is that I have a tendency to do that. And so just processing and practicing how to not rely on other people to give me a thumbs up for every decision that I make. I would say about God is I have really learned how to appreciate the redirection from God. I would say that in the past, whenever I've planned on doing something and I've been redirected, I've always felt guilty or shameful about it. Oh, God is mad at me because I didn't know what direction I should have been going in. But I have learned that redirection from the Lord is sometimes the most comforting, freeing thing that we can experience. I was talking to my friend about this the other week, and we were talking about Psalm 23, which is that passage that a lot of people know. And it's just though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And then it says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And we were just talking about that part of that passage, because a shepherd's rod and staff, you wouldn't think of that as being the thing that comforts, because it's used to kind of direct. And so you wouldn't think of a rod and a staff, which are the signs of discipline, being comforting, but they really are, because I think if I had tried to keep going in the direction of engineering and just trying to frantically figure out why I was unhappy, I would have driven myself crazy. And the Lord in His grace just completely turned me around and redirected me. And it was the most freeing thing ever, because it was great, I was just going in the complete wrong direction. Now I can turn around and go in a new direction, and that feels a lot more freeing and a lot more hopeful. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, just the discipline and redirection of God is out of love. He never disciplines out of anger and wrath towards His children. It's always out of love. So Okay, and then the last question that I'm going to answer is, how did you know that you are making the right choice? I would say, I don't know if I would have told you that going into teaching was 100% going to be the right choice for me. I had done a ton of research, I had prayed a lot, I had talked to so many people just seeking wisdom from other educators and advice. And so I was pretty sure, but more than anything, I just knew that getting out of where I was the right choice. My mental health was just trashed. Like, at my worst, I was having panic attacks like almost on a daily basis. I could not function even outside of work. I was so scared and nervous and weighed down by the idea of having to go back to work the next week that I literally, it was like debilitating. Anytime that you do not feel free and you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, something needs to shift, whether it be your mindset, whether it be the support and community around you, whether it be the place that you work, whether it be external environments, I don't know, something needs to shift. And so really the fact that I was just so miserable and so not myself was what made me know that I was making the right decision by getting out. And like I said, I had kind of tried a bunch of things to make engineering work. I had really tried to, exhaust all my options, and I did, and it just wasn't for me. That is the last question I'm gonna answer. I feel like I've been talking for a very long time. Hopefully this video isn't 10 million years long, but I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of reflection video on 1 year post transition from corporate to education. I truly feel like a new human being. I feel like a different person than I was last year, and I think that that's a really good thing. It's just been really cool because as alone as I felt last year and what I was going through, I have received so many comments, DMs on Instagram from people who are like, I'm going through the exact same thing, whether it be at an engineering job or at just a different job, whether they're transitioning into education or they're just looking for a new dream. Like, I have received just so many messages, and I'm just so thankful that God has used where I felt super duper alone to help other people feel less alone. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for watching. I would love it if you wanted to subscribe, if you wanted to stay hanging out on this corner of the internet with me. I would love to have you. You can also connect with me on Instagram, just at Abbey in the Classroom. I would love to talk to you there as well. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day whenever you're watching this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.